Hello, my name is Lisa Schirch. I'm a senior research fellow with the Toda Peace Institute. And in my role, I commission research reports on the impact of social media on conflict dynamics around the world. And I also explore the role of technology for peaceful and democratic goals. I am a professor of the practice at the University of Notre Dame's Kroc Institute for International Peace Studies, which is in the Keough School of Global Affairs. And I'm glad you've joined me today to explore the positive and negative roles of social media in terms of democracy and conflict today. Thank you. So I'll be sharing my slides today with you on the role of technology and social cohesion. Many of the images I'll be using today were generated by an AI image generator called Midjourney. The main points of my presentation today are that toxic polarization around the world is increasing. Social media technology is playing a role in that polarization, and technology can help us to depolarize and make decisions together. I'm going to start with this quote from Steve Jobs, who was the CEO of Apple Computers. Steve Jobs described computers as bicycles for the mind that amplify human energy. So a person walking and bicycling might expend the same amount of energy, but the person on a bicycle will go further. And in this way, computers are also sort of these amplifiers of human energy, helping us think more quickly and on many more subjects. But when we think about bicycles and computers, there's also sort of limitations in the direction that we can go. So on a bicycle, humans steer the bicycle, but digital tools are also sort of steering our human behavior. The design of digital products shapes the direction or the road that we can pedal on. My presentation today will look at how digital tools are spreading hate and disinformation online that spill over into real-world violence. But I'll also be talking about how digital tools can help us build bridges online to improve social cohesion, which is the glue that helps societies stay together. I'll be talking about the affordances and algorithms of digital products and platforms and how these shape humans and how they're behaving toward each other. Affordances are the features of a tech product that shape behaviors, and this would be like the like, share, and comment features of most social media affordances. Algorithms are then the computational settings of a tech product that determine what content users can see. So I'll be using these two words, affordances and algorithms, so I wanted to just define them here quickly. Over the last 20 years, societies have used these new digital platforms to organize democracy movements, to build bridges across divided communities, and to empower individuals to engage in civic action to improve their lives. So these images are all generated by AI and artificial intelligence image generators, but you can see in each of the photos that technology is already playing a positive role for humanity. But of course, we all know from our news stations that digital tools are also shaping our behavior by amplifying the divisions between people, encouraging and even rewarding people to take a path toward toxic polarization, where groups distrust and attack each other. And often it's like these digital tools are incentivizing, creating incentives for us to distrust and hate other people. And the algorithms on some of the social media platforms are amplifying that distrust and hate. Technology tools are not neutral mirrors, so they're not just an image of what we actually think. They distort our view of ourselves and of other people. While it's important to note that technology and these kinds of platforms we'll be talking about today are not the origin of social and political division, there is wide agreement that social media in particular is amplifying polarization. So it's making it worse. There was this report from Reuters news agency on the role of Facebook in Myanmar. And the report was called Hate Book, and noted that the Myanmar military used Facebook to promote hatred and mobilize genocide in the country against the Muslim population. So social media is a tool that can be weaponized for mass destruction. In 2021, I edited this book with the Toda Peace Institute on social media impacts on conflict and democracy. In the book, we have chapters by 13 different authors from the global South. These countries on the map that are highlighted in red are the places where the case studies in the book took place. And what we found out from this research is that what's happening in Myanmar is not unusual. Around the world, Facebook is having a polarizing effect on society. It's making the divisions that already existed even worse and increasing the distrust that people feel for each other. Let me slow down and talk about toxic polarization. I've been using this term, and I want to just explain what it means. When people are in conflict, it can be handled in healthy and unhealthy ways. But conflict becomes toxic or unhealthy when people start perceiving other groups as existential threats, when they distrust and dehumanize others with us versus them narratives. So seeing we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. Or when we just start justifying the use of violence against others. So conflict can turn very unhealthy and can be very bad for societies, just like pollution. So toxic content, which is happening online because of the affordances and algorithms of some of the technology products that we use, it's spilling over into the physical world. And so we're starting to see online hate speech sort of drip off of our computers into real world violence against different groups. There are many different types of harmful content. Some of the earliest content that was found on social media was child exploitation, self-harm, and cyberbullying, often between youth. But as the years have gone by, political actors have started using these platforms for polarizing political speech, to mobilize hate speech, to share mis and disinformation. Misinformation would be unintentionally shared false information, and disinformation would be intentional sharing of false information. There's also this term amplified propaganda, which is when normal people, not knowing that there is that they're reading false information, share it with their friends and their colleagues. And so they're amplifying propaganda, often from a political actor, unintentionally, without knowing the source and the intent of that information. There's also this second column here of types of harmful content, not just being shared by individuals like this first column, but at an industrial scale. It's almost like there are factories in some countries churning out content on social media that is attempting to recruit people into violent extremist groups, to really spread polarizing political campaigns, to share disinformation about what's happening in the world. And we saw this, of course, with the COVID vaccine, with disinformation campaigns by political actors and some by people who are making economic profit off of false information related to the vaccines. And so the World Health Organization and many other health agencies had a very difficult time addressing this industrial scale false and deceptive information in these propaganda campaigns. At the level of national security or global security, many analysts are noting that now countries around the world are using information operations. So they're using social media actually as a weapon, and they call it cognitive warfare. So spreading false and deceptive information about what countries are doing or not doing. And of course, Russia is a renowned spreader of false propaganda, and we'll be talking about that later in this presentation in terms of cognitive warfare against its neighboring countries that want to have democracy. What we know is that toxic polarization is increasing globally, and it's something that we should all care about because it contributes to real-world violence. It also fuels distrust in government or health agencies like the World Health Organization, which is trying to protect us from the spread of COVID. And it really then hampers efforts to solve public problems. And that's everything from COVID pandemic to the climate crisis, because there is industrial scale disinformation, false and deceptive information about climate change, trying to downplay the effects of it, often put out by corporations that are benefiting from the consumption of oil and other sources of energy that are polluting the atmosphere and increasing the climate crisis. So toxic polarization, another way of understanding it is just the separation of society. So individuals feel isolation and frustration, and they may feel that they are not able to participate in decisions that affect their lives. So this is sort of like decreasing human agency, our feeling that we can participate in the decisions that affect us. We might feel a sense of exclusion and behave with contempt and distrust toward other people. And we may also feel that distrust toward our leaders and institutions. And we may, see them as all corrupt or captured by elite interests. Divisive digital content influences the way political actors and traditional media and the public are discussing public issues. So even for those of us who are not on social media, maybe some of you in the audience today think you're safe because you don't use any of these products, but they're really altering the entire fabric of society. Because even though you might not be on them and seeing this disinformation, it is changing how your neighbors and your family may be thinking about public issues. It's also changing how journalists cover topics like COVID and the climate crisis, because many journalists are also picking up on the disinformation that has been shared online. There are affordances on social media. That's just like what the social media product allows you to do that are unique and different from the kinds of media that existed before social media. So traditional media, sometimes we call it legacy media, is the TV, radio, and newspapers, for example. What makes social media unique are these sort of 12 unique characteristics, and that is the speed of information, the scale of it, the scope and the searchability, the secrecy that can happen online. I won't go through all of these because my book goes into much greater depth on how social media communication is unique and distinct. But I just want to make the point here is that it's not the same as offline media. Legacy media, our traditional journalists and news outlets have many laws and rules that apply to them that prohibit them from spreading false information, whereas online information, there are no gatekeepers, there's no editors. So it's really, people are unable to see and to know what is true and what is untrue. And what the online space allows is for anybody to start spreading false and deceptive rumors or false propaganda and really causing mass chaos in society because nobody knows what's true and what's not true. That's why this Oxford University professor, Philip Howard, called his book Lie Machines. And the title of the book is How to Save Democracy from Troll Armies, Deceitful Robots, Junk News Operations, and Political Operatives. And at the same time that this Oxford University professor was writing his book on social media, MIT, a university in the United States, came out with a study that showed that false information spread 6 times as fast as true information on social media. So again, the online environment spreads communication in a very different and distinct way, and it's often more harmful to society. Another factor is that, when we have digital spaces, we're all looking at different screens. So we each see different information on the social media platforms that we're looking at. This is very different than all of us together looking at one screen together, where we can have a shared sense of reality and shared facts about the world. So traditional media outlets really helped to bring society together because we were sharing our information sources. The internet now is giving us each a unique news feed or search result that really makes it more difficult for us to have a common set of facts that we can discuss together. Some scientists are calling this the collapse of truth. So we have what's called epistemic insecurity, which means we don't know what is true and what is not true. Epistemology is how we know what is real and what's not real. And we don't know anymore because we can't tell from the information provided us on these social media platforms. We don't know how to distinguish what is true and what's false. This isn't just by accident that social media platforms have developed in this way that shows us different types of content. So let me just take a few minutes to explain how social media works. So the social media companies are for profit. So they are looking to show users of these platforms different types of advertisements. So advertisers are wanting users of these platforms to stay on the platform as long as possible. The algorithms that show each of us a unique set of news feed on our content are really trying to grab our attention to keep us on these platforms longer. But what social media companies have found is that inflammatory content that's highly emotional, it can be false and deceptive often. This type of content keeps users on the platforms longer. And so these companies show us more and more and more. A comparison of this is when people on a highway see that there's an accident on the side of the road and everybody slows down to look at that accident. It's sort of the same way on these social media channels. It's an information superhighway, and where there is hateful and divisive content, people slow down and they start paying attention more. And while it maybe is unintentional what is slowing them down, the algorithms designed by these companies recognize that they can sell more ads and they sell more attention to the companies when they show inflammatory content. So this is why people say the algorithms are responsible for amplifying division within society. Social media companies then make their profit by grabbing our attention to show ads and collecting our information to sell us more targeted ads. So the other reason that these companies want to keep us on the platforms as long as possible is so that they can understand each of us better. They're basically collecting information on every movement that we make online so that they know how to better target us with ads that increases their profits. So some researchers are calling this algorithmic extremism. And there's a campaign in the United States called the Stop Hate for Profit campaign, because there's this recognition that this industry, the social media platforms are running, it's designed to keep our attention. It spreads false and inflammatory posts because these garner the most attention. And news feeds and recommendation algorithms on these platforms are then amplifying false and inflammatory posts. The other real element here is that many of us enjoy social media, and especially youth like to spend time on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and many other platforms because it gives them feedback from their friends. So our minds are, according to psychologists, really vulnerable to affirmation addiction. And we think when we post something on these social media platforms and people give us a thumbs up, a like, or they share our content, we get a little bit of a reward, a drop of dopamine, which is a chemical in our brains. So this is kind of what one of the founders of Facebook said, that the entire industry is built on this molecule of a little dopamine drop when we see a thumbs up on one of the posts that we have shared. So he said, Facebook is an empire of empires built upon a molecule. This simple idea that we all human beings seek affirmation from others, and these machines give us these little drops of affirmation, and they keep us coming back for more and more. And we spend more and more time, and we see more and more extremist content that is dividing our societies. The US military and NATO talk about social media being a weapon. They call it cognitive warfare. They would say that the brain will be the battlefield of the 21st century, and that future conflicts will likely occur among the people digitally first. So people start engaging with each other in conflict online, and then it spills offline. We can see this, of course, in Russia and Ukraine. So Russia started to spread disinformation in Ukraine more than 10 years ago. And we have a situation now where it's not just Russia, but many countries, including Western countries, have cyber armies where there's sort of this information warfare happening. Sometimes it's political actors, sometimes it's for-profit disinformation, where people make money by selling false information. And it really amplifies and incentivizes the individual producers of divisive digital propaganda. And it's really in this sort of very old strategy of dividing societies in order to be able to influence them or conquer them more efficiently. The University of Oxford has a program called computational propaganda, where they look at authoritarian countries deploying false and deceptive information online. These are the countries that are in the latest survey of countries that have their own cyber armies and are waging computational propaganda, so using computers to spread propaganda. And the intent of this computational propaganda is to suppress the public from airing grievances or discussing public issues or trying to solve issues like climate change together. So they suppress it. They discredit people who are trying to support legitimate journalism, which is investigating corruption and issues like climate change and where greenhouse gases are coming from. And these cyber armies also drown out anybody who's speaking about democracy or human rights. We know that Russia has interfered in elections in at least 24 countries on social media to undermine public trust in government and to polarize the public so that people will turn against each other. There was a US Senate bipartisan hearing, which released a report on how Russia did this to the US in the 2016 election. Many people will immediately say yes, but the US also interferes in other countries' elections, and that is true also. But the scale at which Russia is interfering in elections is far greater than what the US has done in recent years. And what's fascinating and frustrating and scary about Russian disinformation is that it often uses a meme, which is a very small political cartoon. Often it has Kermit the Frog or other cute animal, which is then sort of gaining people as followers and spreading disinformation that turns people against each other. It's why some commentators have said tech platforms have been structured like gladiator arenas, where the algorithms amplify the most divisive voices. So the whole platform is set up so that people will argue and fight with each other, because then you have a huge audience of people who are glued to their screens and making generating profit for the companies who are showing ads on these platforms. Even Facebook's own researchers understand that this is happening on their platform. The Wall Street Journal did an expose several years ago where it noted Facebook executives shut down efforts to make the site less divisive. And it also revealed that Facebook's own researchers said our algorithms exploit the human brain's attraction to divisiveness. If left unchecked, it warned, Facebook would feed users more and more divisive content in an effort to gain user attention and increase time on the platform. I want to switch now to talking about the positive role of technology and sort of this evolution between different strategies. One is called content moderation, which seeks to limit the harmful content. Another is thinking about tech regulation, or rules that governments would apply against technology companies. And the third strategy is designing technology for social cohesion. So this first strategy of content moderation is being carried out by tech companies themselves in what they call the trust and safety teams that have hired content moderators to really kind of put the fires out online. So when they see harmful content, they have a variety of strategies. They can remove it, they can demote it in the algorithm, they can deplatform the person who put the content up there. The challenge here is that many of these decisions, are very complex in terms of limiting people's free speech. And these content moderators have to view very traumatizing content, and they really face a lot of burnout from the tsunami, the wave of harmful content online. The tech companies who have created these trust and safety platforms or teams in their companies see often that the tech platforms, they say, as neutral mirrors, that really the problem is that users are generating this harmful content. And they note that algorithms can demote or moderate content, but cannot generate positive or pro-social content. So this is the idea that really the problem is the user, and the technology companies say we're just a mirror of society. At Meta, which is formerly Facebook, the trust and safety infrastructure has 40,000 people employed as content moderators. But many of these staff feel like they're playing this game of whack-a-mole, where this harmful content keeps popping up and they're trying to keep taking it down. And it's like this endless game that feels futile, because the scale of false and deceptive and hateful information online keeps growing and growing and growing. But yet their teams, their content moderators, are either staying the same, or actually now, because of losses on the stock market, they are losing staff at these teams. So content moderation is getting more and more difficult. Even the staff at these big companies that have hired tens of thousands of content moderators note the lack of sufficient resources to address the scale of the problem, particularly in the global South, where many tech companies operate and have no staff who speak the local languages. So it's like this Tower of Babel online where people are trying to figure out what does even hate content look like in different languages. So the pushback on this is that, tech companies are trying to show themselves as neutral, as not altering society and simply being a mirror of society. But we know that tech platforms are not neutral mirrors. We know that the affordances and algorithms steer and amplify certain human behaviors. Within the tech community, sometimes this is called social engineering. And one of the leaders at Facebook called this the eat your veggies approach, which means they were trying to steer away from designing technology to support social cohesion. And so, there's been this feeling that tech companies can reduce the harmful content, but they can't design themselves to support pro-social or better content that might align technology with humanity's best interests. But there are organizations that think that tech companies can do better. The Center for Humane Technology grew out of Silicon Valley in California, and they really have this idea to shift technology towards this more humane future that supports our well-being, our democratic functioning, and a positive information environment where people can find the truth and know the facts of a situation. Part of the strategy there is that governments have a role in tech regulation, not just for privacy concerns, but what are the affordances and algorithms that tech companies should be allowed to have? Should they be allowed to have an algorithm that spreads false and deceptive information? So sometimes people call this, we have a freedom of speech, but not a freedom of reach. And freedom of reach then is the amplification of content that happens at platforms. So this is where tech companies are not neutral mirrors, but they decide what they're going to amplify and show people. This has all, of course, gotten more complicated, as I noted, as in the last year, in 2022, the tech sector laid off 100,000 tech workers, and mostly they downsized or eliminated human rights and content moderation teams, partly to falling tech stock prices, to Elon Musk's Twitter acquisition, and other global factors that are influencing the industry. To the argument that my new work and research at the Toda Peace Institute brings is that we can design technology to support social cohesion, or the glue that holds society together. Social cohesion means that people have individual agency to participate in civic life. It means there's horizontal cohesion between groups, and it means we also have vertical cohesion between public institutions and the citizens that use these institutions. There are a number of tech tools that I'll share to give examples of how technology can help us. In this slide, we see an online perception gap quiz where people online can check to see whether they accurately understand other political parties within their society. This is a quiz that this group, More in Common, ran on social media platforms in the United States to estimate, the proportion of Republicans and Democrats holding extreme views. People estimated that it was 55% when it's actually lower than that. So it's reality checking. It's helping us perceive the world in a more accurate way. Other tech platforms that help to build social cohesion are Airbnb and maybe Uber, and some of the ways that people are sharing their homes and their vehicles, with others, creating new spaces where people can understand each other. There are other ways. This technology can help us to learn how to communicate effectively with people who hold different points of view. A variety of groups are making chat bots. So these are applications on technology platforms that allow you to practice communicating with somebody on difficult topics. So the angry uncle chatbot is it's an automated robot online who will pretend to be your angry uncle who disagrees with you politically, and you can practice your skills talking with your angry uncle. There's another one by the Canadian-based Suzuki Foundation called the Climate Bot, where people practice talking to other people on issues of the climate and the climate crisis. Another way technology is using is useful for building social cohesion is by creating prompts online that encourage people to use effective communication skills. On eBay, there's a resolution center where buyers and sellers can solve problems with each other. And this is also an automated bot, basically, that helps buyers and users find effective communication strategies so that they can solve their problems with each other online. Some of the authors here called it the new handshake, online dispute resolution. The platform that I am most excited about this week is a platform called Polis, which enables people to make decisions together. The country of Taiwan has used this platform to survey public attitudes on a variety of different public policy issues. And it really enables collective intelligence by making it easy for citizens to engage in policy discussions. They talk about it listening at scale. So thousands of people can engage with each other in conversation and be able to really see where their common ground is. And it's resulted in legislation 80% of the time. So in Polis, it's been designed. So the affordances and the algorithms of Polis are specifically designed to support social cohesion. So there's no way for people to troll or have arguments because it's not a back and forth conversation. So they've designed the affordance so you can put in your ideas, but you can't respond to other people's ideas in a negative way. You can vote up or you can vote down for another idea. But it's really the platform is incentivizing you. It's encouraging you to figure out where is their common ground and how do you word your proposal on a policy issue in a way that other people will vote up. So you're looking for a way to address the interests and needs of all the stakeholders involved. There's another platform called Remesh, which does something very similar to this in terms of offering these affordances and incentives to listen at scale. It also helps us actually create visual conceptual maps that show how groups' ideas relate to each other, which then helps us see where there's common ground and how we might generate really creative ways of solving problems. What's interesting is that Twitter, the large tech platform, has adopted some of Polis's affordances and algorithms in its new program called Community Notes. It was also called Birdwatch. But basically, this is a way where if people see disinformation online, they can respond to the disinformation by adding another source of information. And then people can vote up or down on this, and you can start building consensus on whether a post is true or not true. So it's a way of democratic deliberation, which enables the public to think together and to listen to each other at scale, to try to discern what is truthful and what's not online. So the main point of my presentation today is to say computer engineers, especially those with some training in social cohesion design, can really help build tech products that can support social cohesion, this glue that keeps us all together. So computer engineers with expertise in conflict resolution, social movements, and effective communication, they've already built tech products that have these design affordances and algorithms that support our individual agency to participate in civic life, to build bridges between divided communities, and to create opportunities for public input into policy deliberation. And in closing, I'll just say that governments also have several roles to play here. Governments like Taiwan and actually also now the UK are using polis to listen to the public, to have more inclusion in public policy deliberation. The United Nations is also using the platform Remesh to consult with the public on peace processes in Yemen and Libya. Governments need to be investing in this kind of technology to improve social cohesion and to really ensure that platforms are financially viable. Regulation then could create penalties for tech products that have affordances and algorithms that amplify polarization, so that companies really feel both being sanctioned or penalized for harmful content online and really rewarded for building products that amplify social cohesion. So with that, I will end my presentation and look forward to having questions from any of you online. Thank you for this question. Yes, I think both the January 6th insurgent attack on the US Capitol and the very similar January 8th attack against the government in Brazil are clear examples of how disinformation online, which has been amplified by social media platforms, algorithms, has generated really dangerous dynamics within society. So this disinformation, that there's political actors who want to divide us and want to amplify our distrust of each other, and really with the goal of undermining democratic elections and democratically elected leaders. And so the situation in the world today is very dangerous, and the polarization in these societies in the US and in Brazil and many other countries where this is happening, we were already divided. So it's not the source, it's not the only source of division, but it is making it worse. And it's making it worse exactly at a time when we need to be able to solve problems together. We need to be able to solve climate change together so that we create societies that have a different energy infrastructure and that we can work together to make sure that everyone has enough food and water and access to the basic needs in life so that we can continue to live together and coexist. So yes. I believe that we can use technology also in helping to build that public consensus. So while the existing social media platforms are having a negative impact on societies like the US and Brazil, I believe that we can use tools like Polis and Remesh to find ways of making decisions together so that we can solve these problems and find creative solutions that bring us together. So all of us are in the difficult situation now where some family members use some sources of information online and others use different sources of information. And like I shared in my presentation, we have this crisis of truth and facts. We all are looking at different sources of information and we are reaching different conclusions about the world. That can be very dangerous, and it's dangerous precisely during a global pandemic because the first wave of disinformation told us that COVID wasn't real and that we didn't have anything to worry about. And then a second wave of false information came that said that masks didn't work and we didn't need to wear masks. So even though COVID was real and we did need to wear masks to prevent the spread of COVID. And then there was a third wave of disinformation on COVID about the vaccines. And people said that the vaccines would kill us and hurt us. Well, that was also false and deceptive. Now millions of people around the world have had the vaccine. It's one of the safest vaccines in human history. It was backed by 20 years of research, and it's been incredibly effective where it has been used in preventing death from COVID. So we can see already that disinformation causes people to die unnecessarily. And by some estimates, millions of people have died because of the false information about COVID.